I'm excited to get started with this discussion on how the big pharmaceutical industry is utilizing this new technology of quantum computing. And I really want to kick things off with Govinda Bhisetti, who's the head of computational chemistry at Biogen. And an interesting thing I know about Biogen is that they've been working on a collaboration to develop a molecular similarity method for screening, virtual screening of drug candidates. And Govinda, I'd love for you to tell us more about what that work is and how it's going.
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. So it started about 3-4 years ago. Accenture, who is our general consultants, they approached us with this offer of collaboration of solving, unsolved. There are many unsolved problems in drug discovery uh, using the new emerging, quantum computer. That was a very exciting. I and my team got excited, and we had several rounds of um, discussions with them, brainstorming about various problems we want to solve using this super duper computer. But we not knowing, details of the status of the hardware and the algorithm required, we looked at various problems. Then, to then we settled on molecular similarity because it can be solved at that time using the quantum annealer machines that were available.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
And
how it started.
got it. And what? How has it been going? Like, what have you kind of discovered in the course of, using an annealer for this type of work?
Yeah, it is a simple problem. It is, we have a lot of ways to do this and very, very fast way we can do, but we still face,
Mhm.
finding similar molecules. So this offered an approach which was not possible using classical computers because it combined 2D and 3D. And also when you do graph representation, it can be NP-hard problem, all the combinations, right?
Mhm.
So this offered this, a possibility to solve that problem. And when we did, we tested it on 13 targets, from the, UCSF drug, actually called the data set. And out of 13, 9 cases or so, it outperformed the standard method.
Now, see, this is a fascinating result to me because it calls to mind. I was reading an interview with another one of our panelists, Emir Roach, head of emerging technologies and data at Takeda Pharmaceuticals. And Emir, back in September, I read an interview with you where you mentioned that one of the challenges in applying quantum computing to these kind of pharmaceutical problems, and particularly the chemistry problems, is that it's hard to tell what's the best fit for classical and what's the best fit for quantum. And it sounds like Govinda has an interesting approach here, and I'm curious to know how you and your work are approaching this problem of identifying what's the best fit for quantum computing.
Thank you for that question, Alex. If I may expand on that, I think the challenges we're facing is not only the broad approach of how do we translate a chemistry problem to a quantum problem, but also how do we communicate that to the persons who are going to collaborate with us to implement it on decide what type of quantum computing platform, whether it's a discrete gate model or a continuous gate model quantum computer, or even in the discrete gate model quantum computers, which architecture is optimal, is a challenge that we have to overcome. The way we are approaching that essentially is a lot of bilateral learning with the partners we are collaborating with. We are learning more about their platforms, their thinking and history and background on how they have worked on chemistry problems initially with more simple molecules. And we try to triangulate what our domain experts know and what their domain experts know, and then find how we can convene those two subject areas.
I think that makes sense, and it actually leads me to something I was curious about to ask our final panelist, who's Martin Strahm, the head of data science at Roche, and looking at the Roche website on quantum computing, there's actually something that caught my eye, which was a quote from one of your colleagues that said that the theory of what we can do with quantum computing is there. It's the hardware that isn't there yet. And kind of in listening to your fellow panelists here, uh, I'm curious to know from your perspective in the work you're doing, is there a hardware approach that's maybe more useful right now? And are there also hardware approaches, whether it's trapped ion or gate model or whatever might be, that you're kind of excited to look at in the future as it matures?
Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting question, and it's hitting only part of the problem. So the algorithms are there, but they are there only for a few problems that can be solved with
Mhm,
very big quantum computers. So Shor's algorithm from Peter Shor is quite established. Everyone knows it, but you need millions of qubits to really solve a real world problem. Therefore, currently people are looking in uh, so-called NISQ algorithms, so algorithms that run also on noisy intermediate scale quantum computers. And there is a lot to explore, how to develop these algorithms and to um, apply it to different questions. So I think there's still a lot to do also on the algorithm side. On the hardware side, um, I cannot say so much. We are not a hardware company. We cannot develop a
mhm,
quantum computer. We are going to use quantum computers, and there are different technologies like photonics, which works at room temperature, also very interesting. Most other quantum computers are based on superconducting technology, so they run only at very, very low temperatures, which make them a bit challenging to put them in a
mhm,
in a room. Um, and then there are different programming models. So, and there we are looking only in, currently at least, in gate-based algorithms where a lot of theory exists around how to apply that. And we are not looking currently at least into annealers. And this is just
mhm.
maybe a random choice.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious, Martin. Right now, do you have? Is there something practical for the work that you're doing and your team is doing right now, or are you still kind of developing algorithms, for different ideas, but kind of waiting for the ability to apply them?
No, we are already trying to apply algorithms now, and I think this is really needed, that you teach people or that people have the time to learn. I think you cannot wait and wait and wait. And then when the technology is ready to come up with great results, just jump on it. I think that would be challenging. You also have to educate the people to find the talent. And it's really difficult to find talent who knows sufficient uh, about pharma or drug development and about how to implement such algorithms or to use such algorithms. So I think it's a good time to start early.
Mhm.
I
And
like if I may add.
Govinda, yeah, please
Yeah,
chime
I
in.
may add on this. So, Martin definitely pointed out the challenges we are facing utilizing this very, very promising technology, which can really change things the way we do drug discovery. It has the potential, but the expertise required is very, very scattered and limited, right? We need people who are developing hardware, that they understand that part of it, and somebody who's developing algorithms on different kinds of hardware, and then we are the end users. What are the problems we can solve,
Mhm,
right? And are there those problems can be solved by the existing hardware and also the algorithms, right? So we have all these three categories of people have to work together. And as Martin
Yeah.
pointed out, we also have to develop talent. When the technology is ready, we need this personnel who can actually come and work on these problems.
And I'd like to bring this to Emir because I know that with kind of the limited talent pool and with this being an emerging technology, I know that collaboration and in working and developing these kinds of things is really near and dear to your heart. And so I'd love for you to expand a little bit on some of the work that you've been doing, both personally and as part of your company, to kind of expand the collaboration and the use of quantum computing.
Absolutely. As Govinda and Martin and myself highlighted, to zoom in on the comment that the talent is scattered, we have to be effective in convening different domain expertises to solve these problems. And the thesis is that we can look at this from the lens of partnering with startups, or we can build on that and look into how we can partner across pharmacos. And for that purpose, we mobilized an organization called QPharm, which all of our organizations are a member of. And the intent is that we would collaborate to identify what are the highest problems, have pre-competitive knowledge sharing on how we can operate on those problems to accelerate the investments in this field. And inside Takeda,
So
just to give an example, we have focused on later stages of development, with specifically on crystal structure prediction for stability purposes. And that work is in progress. We do have two teams with two different quantum computing platforms that we're having discussions with.
So that's fascinating, and I know for several of your companies, you're not working directly to apply, say, quantum computing to the current pandemic, but I do know that the pandemic, one interesting thing that's happened as a side effect is increasing collaboration between pharmaceutical companies, between biotech, between government. And even if you're not working directly on issues related to COVID-19, I'm curious to know if that accelerating collaboration has kind of poured over into Q Farm and the other collaborative efforts that you're doing, Emir.
Great question. To your point, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated collaboration between pharma companies. Publicly, it is known that we are collaborating with Moderna to potentially manufacture their vaccines in Japan. It is publicly known that our plasma-derived therapies unit has begun collaborating with other plasma-derived therapy companies around the COVID-19 alliance. Has this poured into the quantum computing collaboration space with QPharm? No, not in the context of COVID-19.
But speaking of that pandemic, Govinda, I know that your company has been doing some work with quantum computing and application to the pandemic. I'm curious if you can expand on that a little bit and what you're kind of finding through the process.
So we started utilizing this graph-based similarity method. We successfully applied on this test set, and we are using that method to search for molecules which occupy this 3C protease active site. There are like crystal structures of about 60 fragments bound to this protease, which is a critical enzyme for this virus. And by blocking that one, you can block the infection, right? So the idea is that take the bunch of those molecules there and then find similar molecules which are going to be more potent. So that work is going on as an extension to our collaboration with the 1Qubit and Accenture. In addition to that, we are also working with the European agency, which is a collaboration of all the European companies. We are also part of Europe, a European company, Biogen. So we're supplying compounds which could target various molecules are the targets of virus, and we're collaborating that way. And people know that Biogen is working with Ware therapeutics to develop antibodies. So there is a lot of collaboration going on across the industry.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I want to segue a little bit, and this is moving backwards a little bit, but that's sometimes how my mind works. Martin, you mentioned something about developing algorithms that can work with the more noisy intermediate phase applications. And I'm also curious. I know that a lot of startups, in particular, have been taking a hybrid approach for pharmaceutical applications. Kind of merging classical and quantum algorithms. Is that something that your team is doing as well? And do you think that's something that will continue for a while, or do you think it's more of a kind of a intermediate step as the technology matures?
Yeah. So I think the hybrid algorithms, they will continue for quite a while. We, as pharma industry, we are interested in really, really large molecules. And these are probably not very quickly accessible to quantum computers. So we are looking into the interesting parts, the challenging parts, which cannot be calculated correctly with approximations or with classical approximations. So we have this hybrid approach where we treat a large part of a protein in a say semi-classical way, and the rest is then treated with the quantum computer, the really challenging parts. And this will continue for some time. There will be more and more atoms of the molecule which can be treated with a quantum computer, and this will be a slow transition. And the other thing is, people frequently ask that will quantum computing replace high performance computing? And I think this will never happen, because you should consider the quantum computer not as a general purpose computer. The quantum computer cannot have loops. It cannot have ifs and conditions. So you should more think about a math coprocessor or a graphical computing unit, which is now used for deep learning or so. So there will always be the classical computer together with the quantum computer. That's the second part of the answer to this question about hybrid.
Yep.
Got it. That makes sense. And Emir, the audience in cyberspace couldn't see it, but I could see you nodding along with what Martin was saying. So I was curious enough if you had anything to add or build on with what he was discussing about hybrid algorithms and approaches.
Well, I agree with everything he said, and specifically would like to zoom in on his last comment that quantum computers are not going to replace classical computers, but it's going to be complementary because of the nature of how a qubit in a quantum computer operates.
So, and go ahead.
We are already into the cloud, right? We are using different kind of hardware, right? Wherever is it needed, we do GPUs and CPUs, right? All that combinations we already do, and this will be another combination in the mix, another component of the mix. The quantum computers.
So Emir, I saw you nodding along with Martin as he was discussing hybrid approaches to these problems, and curious to see if you had anything to add to what he was saying.
No, I agree with everything that Martin said. Due to the nature of quantum computers, how the qubits operate, we believe that the classical computers and quantum computers are going to coexist, and we're going to be using them as integrated solutions. And because the hardware vendors and partners are exposing their technologies through we believe that in the near term, we will not be purchasing a quantum computing device with its refrigeration units and what have you and bring it into our house, but leverage their cloud offerings to build the integrated solutions.
Great, and this has been a fascinating discussion, I have to say. Unfortunately, we are right out of time, so I want to thank all of our panelists for really providing some great insight into how quantum computing can be applied to pharmaceutical problems, and hope all of you have a great rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.